Hello, I'm Rock House, and because things on the internet seem to lose their date reference, today is Tuesday, October 4th, 2022. And being a little bit conservative, a little bit lazy, a little bit active, whatever, this portion of the video is probably going to be used to intro several site visits of our Wish of a Lifetime AARP regime trip from San Diego to Bastogne for the Battle of the Bulge battlefields and museums. I owe Wish of a Lifetime and AARP and regime a lot for granting this wish. This was probably one of the 5 most emotional events in my life. I'm married, 1 wife, 3 daughters, military career behind me, a lot of other things in my life, and this trip ranks in probably the top 5 most emotional events in my life. So let's get on with it. Thanks for watching.
Bastogne Barracks was the last of our intentional museums in Bastogne. It was phenomenal. We're going to give you representative images. Huge building, actually several huge buildings. Only one of them was open because they're refurbishing some of the others. This is the entrance sign as you walk up to it. This is part of the compound. It was closed off, but significance of that antenna in the background, which was not there during World War II. At the base of that antenna is the building that General McAuliffe used for his headquarters. This is sitting on the Bastogne Barracks property. It's inside the fence, obviously. It's an M2 long top 155mm cannon, which was towed around. The spec sheet is provided here. It's a long-range weapon, has to be towed. It's got to be a killer. This is also sitting on the opening grounds. It's the body of a Sherman tank, and now we had a conflict, a mental conflict, because the M2 Long Tom was in such good shape, and this is just a derelict. We would later resolve that. So here's another picture of the Long Tom and a field cannon sitting next to us, and this is the contrast between the displays. The Long Tom is in excellent condition. The other 2 are just placed and forgotten, so to speak. We found this once inside the museum. This is a memorial, and we translated the French, which I won't even try to pronounce, but it's "Glory to our dead," which we appreciated. Now we found this truck on the way into, so I decided to put my wife in front of it. It was kind of interesting. It's not being well taken care of, but you have to have your priorities when you have limited time. And here's the data sheet for it. We're walking the grounds from the entrance gate up to the one building that was open. This is the maintenance facility, and that tank on that tank transporter trailer center screen looks pretty modern. We understood this is actually a Belgium military active army facility, and they do major repairs here. I can't confirm that. That's just what we understood. Here's the back side of the maintenance building. It is huge. The size of the doors indicate they can take very large equipment. In the foreground, I think that's a Sherman tank with its turret removed. The turret looks like it's sitting on a trailer off to the right with a anti-aircraft gun between them. And this scene was set up showing a wrecker, a couple of wreckers trying to pull up a what I think is a Deuce and Half. Whatever. The wrecker on the right we know, or it's identified as an M1A Ward La France heavy wrecker. We don't know what the wrecker on the left was. It wasn't identified. And here's that Ward La France wrecker, better shot of it. And this is the type of signage throughout the museum on the vast majority of the displays, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to, after I show you an item, I'm going to carve that so you can read it if you want to stop the videos. One of the more interesting things we found was this engine sitting outside, an A57 multi-bank Chrysler engine for the M4 Sherman tank. It has 5 banks, 2 crankshafts, 1 output shaft. I would love to see the blueprints on this. I'd love to see one of these running and operating. This looks like an extremely interesting piece of machinery. I marveled at that thing. That interesting. Bedford OYD truck. Not sure what OYD stands for, but it's a British truck, and whatever. It was there. It looks nice. It's well maintained. This is a M24 Chaffee reconnaissance tank, only because I'm reading the labels. It's classified as a light tank, and this might be what's sitting out in front of the museum as not in real good shape. Joyce is looking at something on it. I'm not sure what. We were about to enter the museum building that was open. It's on the right side in the background in this one, World War II vehicle exhibit. That was the only one that was open at the time. Here's a British A34 Comet tank, another tank I don't recall seeing in any movies. A lot of the vehicles that were in here were obviously numerous World War II productions. This particular tank, 1186, that's not a whole lot, but I've never seen one in the movie. This little artillery piece was sitting out in the yard outside, obviously, and no signage on it. I'm going to guess it's a 25mm cannon of some kind. Just suspect that it's British, have no idea. To say there's a variety here, here's a 4-inch British Mark 21 naval gun. It was interesting, kind of like naval stuff. And a Panzer Mark IV, and it says version, however you want to pronounce that in German, J. So it looks like I expected it to be bigger. I was actually amazed by its size. It's incredibly small in relation to what I thought it was. And we're inside. This gives you an idea of the size of the building. It's monstrous. And this is down the right aisle. There's an opposing aisle on the left side, and there's a center section. Joyce's back is up to the center section. The center section's probably 25 feet wide, and this building's absolutely huge. It is filled. I'm not sure if they could get anything else in here other than people. There's a number of displays set up as to how these vehicles would be used. This is a British Lloyd Carrier Mark I. It's a tracked vehicle, and you'll see it in the other pictures and in other portions here. It's towing a 6-pounder QF 6-pounder anti-tank gun over the terrain. Kind of okay, nice setup on the display, and here's the data plates for both piece of equipment if you want to pause the video and read them. It is a tracked vehicle. It's demonstrating that it can go a lot of places. It's crossing a railroad track, and look at the play that the trucks have in their tracks. And Joyce is pointing to a sign, Santa Claus went to war. Kind of fun. There was a lot of signage through the museum that represented the era of World War II. I've never seen this one in the movie. It's a German IG-18L Infantry Gun. There was no gun mounted on it. I assume at one time there was. Interesting vehicle, and a lot of interesting stuff in this museum we've never seen before. This one here was a Renault UE (F), which is a security vehicle, only because I translated it. Looks like it's very lightly armored, probably intentionally light, versatile, probably fairly quick. I have no idea. The data plate is provided to you. Let's see what it says. And it says speed up to 30 kilometers per hour, which is about 25 miles per hour, incredibly small. And there is a lot in this museum from numerous countries. The German Flak 88, which is 20 millimeter anti-aircraft gun, sitting there. Step over to the French Renault UE Type 2 Tankette, which was classified as a people mover. Looks kind of cool. Looking at the back of it, I'd kind of like to have one of these to drive around the neighborhood, quite honestly. Wonder if they get more than about 2 miles per gallon. The German Opel Blitzfunk wagon, which translates to be radio truck. I assume that grid on the top is not a luggage rack. I assume it's an antenna of some kind. Only an assumption. And we found this one. It's a field kitchen, a model 1933. And the Germans nicknamed it Goulash Cannon, Goulash Cannon, or Goulash Cannon. Couldn't quite figure out the sign. After I photographed it, was a bit blurred. Rangefinders. This is one of many rangefinders throughout this display. There were a lot of them from all different countries. Extremely necessary device to determine where your artillery rounds are gonna land. A British Fordson Wot6 machinery truck sitting there. It looks really nice. We were told, as I think I said earlier, we were told by somebody at the museum that most of this stuff actually ran. So a British Matilda Mark II infantry. What caught me of interest on this is how they protected the tracks, which was kind of interesting. And later on in our M60s and the M1A Abrams, we would also protect the tracks to a very high degree. The British Valentine Mark II infantry tank. Not sure what defines an infantry tank. Probably not enough armor to protect it in a heavy battle. I'm just guessing. I don't know. And the Ford Humber Box full-wheel drive heavy-duty staff car. I wonder how many of these went around. Big tires, wide tires, so looks like it'd be great on sand. Probably a really good replacement for, or a really good substitute for the Jeep. And then one of the few Canadian vehicles we found in here, the Canadian C15TA armored truck. I assume TA is truck armored. Looks interesting. This museum was a lot of fun. A lot of vehicles in here I've never seen anywhere else. Humber Mark II Scout car. Looks like a great all-terrain vehicle. Wonder how to do on the sand dunes out here. Another Ford Fordson Wot truck. This one is evidently a Model 2. Wonder how that differentiates from the other one. And then they have some honorary memorabilia, whatever, for King Cobra, which was a M4A3E2 modified Sherman, which was the one that was the first tank to penetrate the encirclement of Bastogne, and on the tour of the battlefield you saw where it did that, and it identifies the crew of this tank, which is kind of cool. Cobra King, first in Bastogne. That tank is currently on display, if I'm not mistaken, in Kentucky. And then we have a tank that I'm not sure exactly what one it is, so I'm kind of lost on that one. And we step over to another M24 Chaffee, which is classified as a light reconnaissance tank, so I would assume it's well, 56 kilometers. That's going to be about 40 miles an hour for a tank. That's pretty quick. And they show the Coolant Hedge cutter, which made a significant improvement fighting through Normandy and the hedges, the Brogue country, I think is how it's pronounced, of Bocage country of Normandy. Basically, it was a weed puller, kind of cool. Hate to run into that. Probably be a great anti-infantry weapon, and it's mounted on the front of, if I'm not mistaken, this is a yeah, it's a General Sherman tank. If you're a fan of 1950s, 1960s comic book, the Haunted Tank was a Jeb Stuart, if I'm not mistaken. So, information on the Jeb Stuart. And the Locust was an airborne tank, a light airborne tank. It was put into gliders. The heavy gliders could actually carry very large vehicles. So this one here got chucked out of gliders once they landed. Not sure I would want to ride in a glider that was carrying a tank. So a US M29 Weasel. There's more vehicles in here that I'd love to see if I could bring into my backyard and see how they run around Southern California in the sand dunes and stuff. This guy here, I went back to the internet. I don't have a picture of his info board, so I don't know exactly what he is. The reference on the internet was he is called a universal hauler. He is obviously US, but I have no idea what he really is. I'm going to have to research that a little. This picture's got a Tellermine 42 to the left of the tank wheel, and it's got a mine detector above it. So this is how to blow up a tank, and this is how to keep a tank from being blown up in one picture. My dad's paperwork, as I said, we don't have much. We only have 4 or 5 pages. One was his separation, which is now called the DD-214, but since it wasn't the Department of Defense then, it was a report of separation or something like that. That paperwork says he was a plotter. He said he was an artillery coordinator. So these particular displays would hold probably a great interest to him, and held a great interest to me. This particular thing is a British and Canadian Sexton Mark II track gun. Other than the fact that it was there, a lot of this stuff I'd never seen before. Kind of interesting though. A bunch of radio gear, field telephone, stuff like that sitting in this display. I just took a picture of it because I wanted the picture. And the Sherman Firefly tank is kind of an interesting tank. It's made in the United States, but its main gun is a British caliber gun, and it was given to the Brits to run, to operate. It was not operated by US forces. So here's a Quad 50 anti-aircraft gun, probably something towed around with the infantry guys behind a Jeep to protect them when they're out there, when the big artillery anti-aircraft stuff can't be around. Kind of cool. M55 quad gun. And a white M3A1. I find it kind of interesting. Sometimes they tell you who the manufacturer is, sometimes they don't. Some of the vehicles were take their blueprints, send them out to many manufacturers, so pretty much all you know is that it was blueprinted that way. And this little guy, this Dingo, this is another one. Hey, you know, can we still buy these? See how they run? British Daimler Mark II Dingo scout car. Kind of looks cool, doesn't it? And then we have the British Daimler Mark I armored car. This guy looks like he doesn't get many miles to the gallon. And we step off to this British Scammell Pioneer SV2S heavy wrecker. Look at the tires on this guy. It looks like he was designed to operate in the desert, quite honestly. But then big tires distribute the load so you don't sink in as fast and as quick, which is why semi-trailer trucks have their big tires. Now this guy here, British Morris Commercial C8 field artillery tractor, and there was a trailer behind it. I don't have a picture of the trailer. But I looked at this thing, and besides being an absolutely beautiful piece of work, there is a lot of workmanship, woodworking in this thing. And the air cleaner is inside the cab. I wonder why. Maybe because it was intended to go out into the sandy desert type areas. A lot of beautiful woodwork in this truck. And we go off to the mighty Duck. Now, the Duck, the amphibious 2.5 truck, in reality was a Deuce and Half with a boat body put underneath it, around it, whatever else. It was a 2.5 ton truck that could float, and there are several versions of it running around, and several versions of the Deuce and Half, the 2.5 ton truck. And this guy here is the Mark III, a scout car, U.S. Operated vehicle, and we step off to a side view of a Deuce and Half truck. And the Deuce and Half 2.5 ton truck, 3-axle, what we would call in quote unquote the olden days a 6-wheeler, because you only counted the outside wheels. Now they would be called 10-wheelers. These were built by several companies, and you have to look kind of at the hood work and whatever else. They were kept as standard as possible, but the cosmetic stuff they really didn't care about. And a side view of it, was how simple can you make them, how dependable can you make them. They were all based on the same design, GMC's CCKW 353 design. And Joyce is looking at a howitzer. With that, we only have a couple more minutes to do on this one, because there's only a couple more interesting items I want to show you. These are the remnants of a ferry battle Mark I that was shot down May 12th, 1940. It looks like they may have been in the ground for a while. However, the town of Bastogne has decided that they are going to retain them, so to speak. This was an interesting device, observation dome along the French-Maginot Line, and it looks like it's German and French. I don't think I would show up for work on the day that this was my duty assignment. I think the enemy would, knowing what they were, would want to use them for target practice. So we've come pretty much to the end of the Bastogne Barracks. Clipping through just a couple of photos, there is a lot in this building. If I had my choice, we did it in about 3 hours because of our schedule, and we were walking to and from it, and it was a nice walk. But if I had my preference, I think I'd go back and plan on spending a couple of days there and actually reading the signs and working my way through the displays. As we leave on the way out, I think this is a Chaffee tank, I'm not sure. I decided to get my picture taken. If you read the Battle of the Bulge events, you'll come up on an episode where I think it was the 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment was along one side of an elevated railroad track, and the Germans were along the other side of the elevated track, and neither one of them could either really put their heads up without the other one taking a pot shot at them, and they were throwing grenades at each other. And the railroad track is gone. It's been made into a walking path, and we walked it. This is how we got to and from the Bastogne Barracks, and it was a nice walk. I can only tell you that I owe Wish of a Lifetime, AARP, Rajin, and a whole lot of other people, the donors, the supporters of the program, a whole lot for this. My dad wanted to go back. They granted my wish to address my dad's wish, and I hope I fulfilled it. I talked to a number of people about why we were there. Some of them understood. Some had heard it for the first time. But there's no way I can express my appreciation for this wish being granted. This was truly an emotional event. I think I understand a whole lot more about my dad. I learned a lot about my dad during my time in service. But I think I can see why he wanted to come back. He would have loved this area. It's agricultural. There's trees, there's fields, there's farmers, whatever, and the people are absolutely super. So thanks to Wish of a Lifetime, AARP, Rajin, the citizens of Bastogne then, the citizens of Bastogne now, and my parents and my wife, because my wife put up with a lot on this trip, and she wanted to. She enjoyed it. It's an emotional trip for both of us. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.